often when we're single, we have a voice in our head that make us feel like maybe you're never going to find anybody better than the person that you're with or the person that you last dated, and settle for somebody that isn't right for us. So what I want to know is, how did you not settle and at the age of 60 decide to find the person of your dreams without giving up who you were and who you are?
You have to ask yourself this question: am I worthy of happiness? Am I worthy to attract the right person to me? Because you don't really attract who you want, you attract who you are. And the greatest work that you do is on the inside of yourself. So I sat with myself. I call it me moments. I sat with myself and I wrote a 20-year vision plan for my life. What I wanted to do, what I wanted to accomplish, and who I wanted to attract. And everything came to pass in that 20 years, except my spouse. And I rolled it over to the next 20 years because I realized that happiness that I wanted and the success and the prosperity that I wanted wasn't going to come from another person. It was going to come from me. And I wanted someone to be a traveling companion, someone that had the capacity for me, and not just for who I was, but who I would be. And a lot of people have in their lives people that have capacity for their now, but not for their next. And so I decided I have to have someone that can accommodate me. I consider myself a polymath, which simply means that I'm multi-talented, multi-gifted. At any given moment, I could change. So someone that could accommodate an evolutionary process. And who I am today, I'm not going to be that person tomorrow. And would I have a person in my life that can accommodate those kinds of expressions? So I ask myself hard questions. Do you want the white picket fence, 2 children, or do you want, and a husband, or do you want adventure? And I chose adventure because I felt like adventure was going to help me to continue to connect with the next best version of myself on a continuous basis. And so I made the decision that I was not going to settle at all. Not for a spouse, not for anybody. I was going to explore the full range of everything that I was to myself and for the world. And when I was ready, I felt like, okay, the right man was going to show up. And it's not like they weren't showing up every year. They did. And it's not like I didn't date. I did. But I wasn't looking for a feeling. I was looking for a person that loved themselves just like I love myself and wasn't intimidated by who he perceived me to be. And so that was the journey. And I didn't mind waiting because I was happy with myself. A lot of people think that their success and prosperity and happiness is going to come from outside of themselves. So they look for people and they look for things. And that's why a lot of people become addicted, because they continue to believe that how I feel is going to be based on what I do. And we do more because we want to be more. But what if we can reverse that? What if we could take ourselves serious like we take everyone else? What if we could value ourselves like we valued everybody else? What if we could believe in our dreams? And this is all a part of self-mastery. And I was a part of this self-mastery process, knowing that every season of my life, I was going to be introduced to someone really, really incredible. And that wasn't going to be a person outside of myself. It was going to be me. And secondly, I understood that I could only attract who I was, not who I wanted. So if I was going to attract this amazing human being to me, then I had to be just as amazing. So I worked on me.
Oh my God, I love that so much. If you don't mind, take me a little deeper. I believe in your 20s, you were with somebody and they said that either you had to choose the marriage or career.
Yeah.
In those moments, Cindy, There's so many people, myself included, when I was 20, I married a man and then became a stay-at-home wife for 8 years when I didn't want to. Now, it's not his fault. That was me choosing that. But those are moments of weakness, moments of not having utter clarity, moments of trying to have everything. Like, I want the perfect person and I want this. So how did you navigate that? If you don't mind taking me into that moment, because this is the moment, Cindy, that people make a decision that can then take them off the path to self-mastery, to self-care, to actually looking inwards.
When we meet with ourselves, and those are quiet moments, what do we really feel about ourselves? And do we really approve of our own happiness? This is a huge question. Do you approve of yourself? Do you approve of your greatness? Do you approve of your dreams? Do you approve? Do you approve? Because as women, we are trained to play supporting actress in the unfolding of everyone else's life narrative. And we forget that we've been cast to play leading actress on our own. And oftentimes we're giving a script, and these scripts are invisible. We can't really see it. And people don't even care enough about us for us to read over these scripts so that we can agree or disagree. So as women, culture has this expectation, and men have an expectation that women are there to play supporting actress in the unfolding of their lives, living on the circumference of their lives rather than at the center. So when I realized, Lisa, that I was cast to play supporting actress in the unfolding of my life narrative, which I write. I'm the one that writes the script. Nobody else writes it. And where I ended up at 21, 22, 23, 24, I would make an appointment to be there. And I came to that realization when I sat one day. And my father, I grew up in abject poverty. I didn't really know my father. But at 17, I wanted to go to university. And my father, I called my father, and he said, come and see me at my job at 3 o'clock. And I showed up at 3, and I told him who my father was. Could you tell him I'm here? 3:15, 3:30, 3:45, 4 o'clock, 4:15, 4:30, 4:45, 5 o'clock. He never showed up. The same gentleman walks out and said, oh, I forgot to tell you, your father is not here. I had enough money to catch a bus to his workplace, not enough money to catch the bus back. Home for me was 5 miles away. So I went to the bus stop and I sat down, and the tears were just streaming down my eyes. Something told me to look up, and with blurred eyes, I saw my father drive by. And he did not see me, but I saw myself. And that day, the poor little Cindy Trimm that was waiting for someone to make life happen, I left her at the bus stop. And the person that stood up was the person you see today, the best-selling author, and I can keep going on, Guinness Book of Records. And that let me know the power of adversity. Viktor Frankl said something. He said, adversity introduces a man to himself. So when I started reframing how I saw my life unfolding, how I experienced my life unfolding changed. You have to see yourself. You cannot live a life as a victim. And so that day, I was 17. He didn't see me, I saw myself. I got up and I vowed that I would never, ever play supporting actress in anyone's life. I can only play lead in mine. So I had to learn, it's like self-awareness. That was a self-awareness experience. And self-awareness is knowing where you end and someone else begins. Mm-hmm. So I learned not to take on stuff. And so when my boyfriend at that time, or fiance at that time, said, look, you don't ever have to work another day in your life. And he was Italian. And I'm going to take care of you. So after you finish this degree, you're going to stay home. We're going to have children. I'm going to go out to work. And I wrote a Dear John letter. This is not going to work for me. It'll work for you, but it's not going to work for me. And it was having the courage to defy cultural expectations. And we were talking earlier, culture is either a predator or a prisoner. And a lot of things that we do as women, we've been culturally programmed to do. So I had to learn how to live counterculture. It wasn't easy because I had my family's expectations. I had people's expectations, organizational expectations. And I had to ask, what expectations do you have of yourself? So the initial stages of me saying, I'm going to exert my personal power, and this is what you call self-efficacy, that I'm going to exert my personal power. And, you know, people say, what if you fail? I always say, well, what if I succeed? So I prepared myself for success, not failure. And I think, you know, the scariest journey that you will take is not a journey outside of yourself, is a journey on the inside of ourselves, because we have been trained to ignore ourselves. And that's what culture does. You are here to make everything and everybody else's life work. And if you have energy at the end of your day, that's what you use to take a shower. And that's a miserable life. And I said to my husband when we were dating, a better me is a better we. A better I is a better us. So let me work on myself so that I can bring to the table the best of who I am. And I decided that I'm playing this leading actress in the unfolding of my life, and everyone else has to respond accordingly.
Oh, God, there's so much there, Cindy. How do you make sure in those moments where you realize I have to set my own expectations, block out everybody else, that you don't start to compromise? Because I think that that's also, there's A, the succumbing to the pressures, and then B, there's well, I'm not going to succumb to the pressure, but maybe I'll compromise. So let's say your fiance, when he proposed, and he said, I'm going to take care of you. There can be that voice that's like, this is what everyone dreams about. You can't turn this one away. What if you never find, you know, love again? All these fears that maybe come from past experiences can start to override the momentary feeling of, or the momentary idea that you want to stand in your truth or stand in your power. How did you make sure that it didn't override this of what you're talking about, of like laying out your expectations?
Well, we're created for relationships. I mean, everything in the universe is interrelated and relates to something else. So naturally, we're created for community. We're created not only to reflect one another, but to affirm one another. And I think that we're afraid of being alone. And aloneness is different from loneliness. Loneliness is the absence of people. Aloneness is the absence of purpose. And we're afraid of being alone, because that's where you really discover who you are and your purpose. And we're afraid of that because we're afraid of ourselves. When I look in social media, and I look at all the beautiful pictures of women, and usually we display ourselves in the best light, right? So we got our makeup, our lipstick, our earrings on, and then when you meet the person and you're wondering, okay, the person that I saw on social media doesn't exactly look like this. Because we've used filters, we've photoshopped ourselves, we've done everything to show ourselves in the best of light. At first, I had a problem with that. Now I don't, and I'll tell you why. Because the person that we display on social media is who we want everyone to see. But what if we took the same energy to be that beautiful person that is influential and admired and gorgeous, right? So what if we did the inner work to be beautiful, to be powerful, to be admired? And the makeup is only the icing on the cake. It is not the cake. So in order to not compromise, we have to be comfortable with being with ourselves. And the biggest question is, do you like yourself? Not your body, because your body is not who you are. Your body just gives you permission to live life in time. It's just a vehicle that carries you. The real you is the spiritual you, the person that we can see. What if you did the work with that person that we cannot see and did that work first and then let the makeup and the clothing just be the icing on the cake? And this is what I'm saying to women. I don't have problems with the makeup, but what if you can be that? And I always say, we do more because we want to be more. And the biggest question in life, could things be the way they are because you are the way you are? And what one thing can you change that can change everything? You can change the way you think about yourself. You could change the way you feel about yourself. You could change the way you carry yourself. Those are the things that you can control, and you don't have to compromise that. And if you don't compromise that, your dominant thoughts will attract to you in physical manifestation the relationships, the opportunities, the people that reflect that. That is the physical manifestation of these spiritual thoughts that you have about yourself and what you think you're worth. So the greater work is here. And not compromising is saying no to what everyone else wants for you and determining what you want for yourself and giving people the permission to be disappointed with that. Because if you temporarily disappoint and you temporarily inconvenience a person while you're doing the inner work, you will permanently bless them. But if you do it the opposite, you would live a miserable life.
How do you then actually do that? Because there is wonderful joy that you can get out of making someone happy.
Start where you are. I'll give you an example. I grew up in abject poverty. I'm 8 years old. I want to do ballet. I want to do piano. No money in the house. You can only start with where you are, but you have to determine where you want to be. So the simple thing was, I said to my mother, I want to do piano. I want to do ballet. My mother said, okay. Okay means there's no money in the house. Figure it out. So I started my first business at 8 years old so that I could funnel a dream. So going back to what is it that you can do, not what you cannot do. What I could do was to start this little business to pay for my own ballet. Number 2, never feel like you're a victim. Life is not happening to you. It's happening for you. So once I discovered that, and at 8 years old, I had the power to change my destiny. I've been changing my destiny ever since. 12 years old, I was financially responsible for myself. And life teaches you how to put yourself down when you compare yourself with someone else. So the second thing that you could do, first thing is decide what you want, decide where you want to go. The second thing is never compare your life with anyone else. No one's living a better life than you. They would have to be you. Thirdly, recognize that you've got something to give and start giving. Give whatever you can. It could be a smile, like you give a lot of hugs.
I do.
So you come in and you're giving hugs, you know. But it doesn't have to be something tangible. And there is a spiritual algorithm that happens, that whatever seed you sow, you'll get a harvest of that in your future. So start sowing what you need. So if you want smiles, you get smiles. If you want opportunities, you get opportunities. Start giving of yourself. Thirdly, if at all possible, do the work, the inner work, to make sure that you're pitching at the level of your worth.
How do you do that if you don't actually know what your worth is?
You start thinking, what do I want? So if a person says, I don't want to be unhappy, that's good. I don't want to be unhappy. So think about the opposite of that. So the opposite of unhappiness is happiness. And then every single day, do one thing towards bringing that to pass. And I can tell you exactly how you do it.
What up, homie? I got something free and new to share with you right now. How often are you visited by that negative voice in your head telling you that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, experienced enough, not fill in the blank? One of the most powerful things you can learn to do in life is to turn that negative voice into your bestie. And I want to teach you how to do that and so much more in my 4 Steps to Becoming Confident workshop. And guys, the most amazing thing is you can actually register for completely free for this workshop. So click the link on your screen and I'll see you on the inside.
Because this is what I did this morning.
Yeah, let's do
I
it.
woke up and I'm rewiring my brain, right? So I woke up and I used my left hand because I'm right-handed. So this is how you change your neurological pathways to rewire from habit. So instead of using my right hand, I use my left hand. So I use my left hand to brush my hair. I use my left hand to brush my teeth. And it's arduous, but I know what's happening. After I did that, I used my left hand to take off my pajamas, my left hand to go shower, and bathe myself. Then once I did that, I looked in the mirror and I said, I love you. And I said that 12 times. And then I said, you're great. And I said it 12 times. Everybody that sees you loves you. I said that 12 times. Something happened. I started smiling. It raised my energy. It made me happy. And I talked to that person that was in the mirror. These are practical things that you can do. And then you could say that one thing you're going to accomplish today. You are going to do X, Y, and Z. I said that to myself. You are not going to eat another hamburger. You are not going to eat another chocolate bar. This is what you're going to eat healthy. And I'm talking to myself. I finished that. I did a couple of stretches. And then I started getting ready for my day. It's practical, but it will happen. Because you're rewiring your brain. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. You're emitting a frequency. And you're influencing the entire universe with your thoughts. Unless you make the unconscious conscious, the unconscious will continue to direct your life, and you would call it fate. Oh. So how do you get to the unconscious mind if you're unconscious of it? Well, the conscious mind is responsible for 5% of your behavior. The unconscious mind is responsible for 95%, but you're not conscious of it. But here's the caveat. You don't have to spend your whole life in therapy. You don't. I'm a psychotherapist, right? Trained. You don't have to spend your whole life in therapy. What can you do? Since the 5% is also responsible for creating the 95%, go back up to the 5%. And that's how you reprogram your unconscious mind. And that's what I did this morning. I love you. Everyone that sees you loves you. You are successful. You are productive. This is the most productive day you are going to have. What was I doing? This is a life hack. I was putting myself on autopilot for success, progress, and prosperity. Could things be the way they are? Because you are the way you are. And what one thing can you change that can change everything? You could change your thoughts. And your thoughts are nothing but words contained in this little container. So I life hacked. I changed my thoughts and I changed the subconscious behavior.
I love how practical that is, that everyone literally can go home and do it immediately. My question is, that was this morning. After the day, you've been here, you've inspired so many people at home. You, let's say, go out, you've got a couple of business meetings, you hang out with your friends, whatever your plans are. Often though, when you get towards the end of the day, you're tired, you're exhausted, you don't have that same energy, and then you end up maybe having that hamburger. And now you almost have lost the trust in yourself. How do you make sure, A, that you don't get to that point where you then betray your promise that you've made to yourself in the morning? And then B, if you do end up slipping, whatever word you want to use, how do you make sure that isn't so detrimental to your self-esteem that then you just spiral downwards?
Love it, love it, love it. So I think of a car to answer this question. You've got the rear mirror, and then you've got your front screen, your windshield. You can either spend the rest of your life using the rear view mirror, which is smaller than the windshield in front of you. Every day you could choose the bigness of your future or the smallness of your past. Every single day. And your past has nothing new to say to you. So stop listening. And your future is calling. And life happens to you in such a beautiful way that tomorrow cannot be messed up in advance. It's a clean slate. It's clean. So I don't regret I did it. And I'm not even going to try to justify it. I'm not going to beat myself down. I always ask myself, what are you going to do in the next minute, the next hour, the next day? All of that is clean. So every day you can rewrite the narrative of your life, every single day. So when you wake up in the morning, it's either going to be rear view mirror, which is so small, so restricted. You put lids and limits on yourself with the rear view mirror. But then if you look at the front, you see this road that lies ahead of you. And you just have to program your GPS. Where you are and knowing where you are cannot get you anywhere. But knowing where you want to be, that's what makes that GPS so amazing. You can punch it in. You could punch it in. That day when my father abandoned me and left me, or I was left at the bus stop, that's a drive-by, isn't it? We all have our drive-by stories. Every last one of us have been a victim of drive-by. It's not what you do when they drive by, it's what you do after. And that's what you can control. That's when I tell women, listen, that's what your husband did, your father did, your best friend, your frenemy, they did that. Are you going to continue to play supporting actress? Are you going to take your life in your hand and play lead? And at 20, going back to 20, I decided I'm going to play lead actress.
Once you've made that decision, then what do you change in your actions? Because there's those moments, I'm obsessed with this, and my audience are probably fed up with me talking about it, but there's the moment, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Sliding Doors. So it's, I think it's Gwyneth Paltrow. One scene, she runs and she makes the train and the doors close behind her. The next scene, she runs and she misses the train and the doors close in front of her. And then you see the different lives of how they go on different trajectories. Mm-hmm. In that moment, there's a person like you that's like, okay, I will no longer be the victim. How do I change? What do I do? How do I, make sure that I'm the one that holds my power? But then there's the other path where people then go down the victim route, where they say, this did happen to me. It was out of my control. I did have a very hard upbringing. And then that takes you down to almost being inactive versus you that took action. What's that difference? And then what actions did you take?
No difference. It's no different because we're making decisions. I mean, I grew up in abject poverty. I made a decision. This is up to me. 8 years old, start my first business. Then I made a decision, I want to be a best-selling author. I never wrote a book before a day in my life. Then I made a decision, look at the decisions. I want to travel the world. I made a decision, I'm going to go to all 7 continents. I made a decision, I'm going to study at Oxford. It's all decisions. So back to the car, a metaphor. Sometimes we just have to shift our lives out of gear because most people are driving with their foot on the pedal and gassing it, but we never shifted the gears. You shift the gears by taking back your personal power and start making conscious decisions. Answer the question every day. What do I want? What do I want this day to look like? What do I want my marriage to look like? What do I want my happiness? What do I want my health to look like? What do I want my future to look like? What do I want? So you go back into that mirror and you ask that person that's looking back at you, what do you want? How do you want to feel today? What do you want to accomplish today? Who do you want to meet today? Where do you want to go today? It's decisions. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's as hard as that. So you have to keep telling yourself over and over and over that, hey, I made this decision. I like it. I'm going to make more like this. And sometimes, even for people without education, it's not about skill. It's about will. Will is always stronger than skill. Always.
I find that the will is the thing that people struggle with the most.
Mm-hmm.
How did you, in saying all that, was it easy or difficult, based on everything you just said, to then turn to your fiance when you were in your 20s and say, no, I won't marry you?
It's always difficult. But it was contrary. It was compromising what I wanted for my life. Going back, people have scripts. Everybody has a script for me. Every friend, my family, my husband, they have a script of what they want from me, what they want me to be at any given moment. I will have to either agree with it or disagree with it, and I have to be comfortable with disappointing people. It's not natural for me to hurt people, very unnatural, because I'm a giver. So I give, I naturally care for people, I nurture people, I nurture people's greatness, I sacrifice my own comfort. That's what I do naturally, because that is where my purpose finds the greatest expression. But what I had to do is to stop making people a priority and myself an option. When I did that, something amazing happened. Amazing happened. People eventually were serviced because I was servicing myself. But I was literally killing myself. And a lot of times your body is talking to you. I recently was in Kenya and I fell down. First time ever. And the part of my body that was hurt was my shoulder. What is that an indication? It could have been my hips. It could have been my ankle. It could have been my finger. What was it an indication of?
Carrying
I
too
had
many people.
started to carry the weight of the world. I was taking care of everyone. I had to retire my superhero cape because my body, I wasn't listening. So my body was saying to me, hey, girl, you're carrying too much. Take a deep breath, exhale, and dump some of this burden. Put the burden on, give people back their burden. Just because you could do everything doesn't mean that you should do it. So I just took on this and I finally fell down. It wasn't a freak accident. It was my body saying, okay, this area you're compromising in.
I guess the good side of that happening is that you have that realization, right? And so many of us, I think, fall into those traps of having to be everything to everyone at all times. And what is that thing that can help stop you in your tracks and pivot? But going back to the people-pleasing thing that you were saying is really powerful. And I'd love to know, like, if you don't mind, I don't know how comfortable you are going a little deeper on that moment where you turn around to your fiancé and say no in your 20s. We'll get to definitely your beautiful marriage now. Because if you're a people-pleaser, in that moment, I assume you know you're going to break his heart. And so how do you make sure that you still stay true to yourself, you still say the words, and you're able to then not go down a path that wasn't right for you?
I think when you are okay with people's response or reaction, because you know where you end and they begin, So once you're comfortable with a person's right to feel what they want and to think what they want and not try to control that, you can only ensure that your motivations and intentions are honorable. But you cannot control their response. That was the secret to living successful, to living fulfilled life, and just having a sense of pure joy, because you've already said to yourself, my intentions are honorable. You know, and even if you get it wrong, and even if people reject you, and even if they never speak to you, you can go to sleep at night because your intentions are honorable by them. If I go this way, I'm going to be compromising myself. And if you compromise in one area, you compromise in all areas. And all you will have left in life is compromise. That's a miserable space to live in. And then number two, asking yourself this question, you know, when I'm on my dying bed, laying on my back, what would I regret? And if I answer that, then I can live a life of integrity, of purity, of transparency, and invite others to do the same. If they're not, that's none of my business. My business is right here. And the more I do it, the more people around me will do it. The more I do it, the more I attract in like kind. So you can only attract who you are and not who you want. So you do the work. That's what I do. I do it in my marriage. I do the work. This is what I expect from myself. This is what I bring to the table. And that was the conversation that we had. Wow. What do you expect of me as a woman? What do you expect of me as a wife? Let me agree with that. Here's what I expect of you as a man, and this is what I expect of you as a husband. Now, you can either agree or disagree, but we've had that adult conversation. And I wish that every married woman, before she got married, I wish I could talk to all of them. Don't lose yourself in a relationship. Culture trains men how to think. They also train us how to think. And men are naturally takers. We are naturally giving. But if you keep giving, and you don't have anything in return, eventually it turns to bitterness and resentfulness. But what if you can ask for what you want? What if you could put a stop to what you don't want? What if you could do that? And you can, just by speaking up. This is not going to work like this. Or give me more of that. And I like how that makes me feel. I don't like how that makes me feel. And if you could do that over and over in your relationships, I mean, that brings such dynamics to the table. But it takes time.
I wish that we could bottle that up and people could just buy it for ease, because I spent 8 years being a stay-at-home wife and I was miserable, but I never told my husband. And it wasn't even something that he was like, no, I expect you to do it. And so once I spoke up and I was like, I love you so much, but I don't want to cook and clean for you anymore. He was like, well, of course. He's like, if you want to change and that makes you happy, what kind of husband would I be to prioritize clean underwear and food over my wife's happiness? And once I spoke out, I was like, oh, it was that easy? You know, obviously it wasn't that easy. We had to do a transition and make sure that we were both dancing together, because when one of you changes, obviously you're both kind of changing, making sure that you're changing together and not apart. But once I said it out loud, Cindy, that's why I just love what you said. It became I just had to ask for what I wanted. And sometimes, especially as women, if we've been brought up in a very traditional cultural background, for me, Greek Orthodox, there was so much pressure that, yeah, of course you're going to be a wife and a mother. That's your goal in life. And so I never questioned it, which then taught me to never speak up. But by to your point, just saying what you want can solve so many problems. And I love that you did that with your husband. And I assume you did that before you guys got married?
Way before I got married. We had a come to Jesus conversation.
Did you really?
Yeah. Let's just talk about this. Let's just talk about this. So my husband, first wife, passed from cancer, unfortunately. So this was his second, and they had been together almost 40 years. So this is a second marriage. So you can imagine 40 years with being with one type of woman, stay-at-home mom, cater to the family. She was not a career lady. You can imagine the kind of transition that he had. So one of my questions were, so what do you think your role as a husband is to me as your wife, would be? And he said, it's to cultivate. And I said, cultivate what? I have come fully assembled, batteries included. What are you cultivating? And he had to change his paradigm because it worked back then, but it cannot work now. So we had to have that sort of come to Jesus as a more mature woman, as a leader. I'm a world leader. So what do you do with someone that's a stay-at-home, and then you transition with this woman that solves problems for life? That's what I do. I solve problems. So I'd never sit with my husband to try to figure out my personal problems. This is what I do for a living. So it was a heavy transition for him, but it was also a heavy transition for me, because now I have this marriage. And what do I do as this alpha woman? I'm an alpha woman. I consider you an alpha woman too. But I'm an alpha woman and an alpha man. What do? So you look at your differences. And it's the differences that make our relationship strong. It's not what's alike. It's what's different. And we're able to complement one another at the level of our differences. So I'm not trying to change him. He's not trying to change me, but I'm growing in the relationships. And I feel that with women who may be challenged in any area, financially, emotionally, whatever area she's challenged in her relationship, in her marriage, I think the advice that I would give them, Lisa, would be to, number one, sit with yourself long enough to define who you are. And it doesn't matter where you are today. So even if you were married, say 10 years ago, and this is how you thought things should have been, but then you changed and you say, oh, there are other options out here, and here's what I want. That is fine. But you need to get around women who have walked the same path that you have to make that transition. So I hadn't been married. I was 60. I'm married now. I had to talk to my married friends. Like, what's it like? What did you do? What frustrates you? We had that conversation. And I was able to say, I'm definitely not going to do that. But I brought to the table for my married friends a perspective that they never had. And they said to me, Cindy, I wished I had talked to you when I first got married, because what you're telling me is the very thing that I needed back then. So being able to surround yourself with people that have been on a journey that you are embarking on is important. That's number one. Number two, who you listen to, because who controls your ears controls your destiny. And so podcasts like this, Lisa, having this one-on-one conversation is changing so many people's lives, because now they have options, things they've never heard of. So surround yourself with people who are demonstrating what you want and who you want to be and where you're going. And even if you can't do it like a one-on-one like this, read someone's book. If you can't do it on a one-on-one like this, listen to someone's podcast. And that's where you will get the empowerment and the perspective that you need to change, to not compromise, and to show up owning your life. And then show up owning the space that you're in. Just own it. Because if you give the uniqueness of who you are with your perspectives, with your gifts, whatever it is, you inevitably make this world a better place. What the world needs is you, the pure you, not a representation of it. And that's why God created you exactly like you are. He created all of us in his image and after his likeness. This is my philosophy. He created all of us in his image after his likeness. He didn't make a mistake. And so the question I asked myself one day, what's wrong with God? Nothing. So what's wrong with you? Nothing. What's broken with God? Nothing. What's broken about you? Nothing. And once I owned that, then I started saying, okay, let's pull back the layers, people's expectations, pull back those layers and connect with your authentic self. Because when you collide with her, you collide with God. Self is the highest expression of divine genius and intelligence given in person form. And that's you, and that's me.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Have you ever had moments of feeling broken?
Yes, I've been deeply broken.
Do you mind talking about that?
Sure. My father, the day that he lied and I was left at that bus stop, it broke me to the core. I'm not a crybaby, so I don't cry a whole lot. But it broke me to the core. But in the brokenness, that's where the real Cindy was found. That crack just revealed something that was hidden. And I go back to Viktor Frankl when he said, adversity is introducing a man to himself. So that adverse circumstance introduced me to me. And I can go on. I remember one time I was on this board and I was outspoken. So I'm opinionated, I'm outspoken, I have an opinion about everything. And I felt like, oh, you're absolutely going in the wrong direction. And I just kept hammering.
The board was going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, the board. And it was going to compromise the organization, the business. And so the chair was saying, we should do so-and-so. And I said, absolutely not. We should not do that. It's only going to compromise the business. And so they decided to vote me off. So I got voted off of this board, and it broke me to the core. So I had this narrative, oh, they fired me and this is what happened. And, you know, these are evil people. That was my narrative. Then when I changed my narrative, that adversity is introducing a man to himself, this is Viktor Frankl quote, then I asked myself, well, which part of myself am I being introduced to? And it was the next best version of myself. So now I've reframed everything. Every crisis is a gift. Every problem is an opportunity. And every adverse circumstance is my most valuable teacher. And that's how I rephrased it. So now if something happens, I'm never a victim. I'm always excited. Oh, good. Something great is going to happen. I'm going to be introduced to the next best version of myself. You should have paid attention yesterday, but now here is that knock on that door. Here's the tap on your shoulder. And every last one of us will have a tap. And it would show up as a problem, a crisis. It would show up as an adverse circumstance. So in any situation you can choose, I can think about Nelson Mandela coming out 27 years. And he chooses to forgive. And the first thing that we need to do is to forgive people because they're doing the best they can. And then forgive yourself. And to continuously say, I'm bigger than my last mistake and better than my worst situation. I choose to believe that. And what version of myself am I being introduced to? That's a long way home. But...
No, Cindy, this is so spot on and this is so strong because I've developed this skill set. I didn't have those exact words, but I think it was Tony Robbins, how do you make the worst day your best day ever? And so I literally, in the moments now where I could be on my knees, feeling broken with the tears, I'm like, how can this be the best thing? You know, and if you just keep repeating it, to your point, that storytelling of how you perceive this moment can be detrimental to your future or actually super empowering to your future. And one of the worst things that ever happened to me, I was to my knees sobbing, and I was like, in real time, okay, how am I going to tell this story in a year? I literally asked myself that as I'm sobbing. I was like, okay, you've got multiple options. In a year, you can look back and say, yeah, I was broken. Or in a year, you can look back and say, I was broken, but I got the F up.
Yes.
And what story do I want to choose? It's like, I want to be the badass that got up. It's like, okay, then get up. And so whether it's metaphorically or actually physically, if you're able to make that switch, and I don't think it's going to be easy. I think if people are listening for the first time of this idea, it may take them a week. It may take them a month.
It may take them a year, 2 years. Here's the thing, feel the feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Let me explain. This is how I explain feelings so that people can understand. So you have a thought about a situation, a circumstance, thought about yourself. In order to know that you're thinking, you have to have an emotion. An emotion is a biochemical, bioelectrical impulse that lets you know that you have this thought. Thoughts are always images, so you don't think in words, you think in pictures. And you can change the picture anytime you want, right? But just having an emotion is not good enough. You end up having a feeling. What is a feeling? A feeling is the interpretation of your emotions, which is an indication of your thought. So what do you do to change your feeling?
Change your thoughts.
Change your thoughts. That's it. So get out of your feelings and into your head.
Mm-hmm.
And, I always say to people, look, the sky is not the limit. Your mind is. And once you remove self-imposed lids and limitations, we impose lids and limitations on ourselves. How far can you go? As far as you want. And one of the things people can change in your life, they can change your right to make a decision. You choose every single day. You choose how you feel. And you could change how you feel. You change where you go. You could do that. I don't like where I am. Where do you want to be? And just do one thing today towards going there. I don't like, maybe how much finances I have in the bank. How much do you want? I did this experiment with myself. I said to myself, I'm going to make $1 million in 8 weeks. I'll make $1 million in 8 weeks. I just challenged myself. But I can't use anything that I have. I have to create it and then literally take it to the market. And I challenge myself, lids and limitation. So a strategy is a plan of action to get you from point A to point B without consideration of lack of limitation. That's what a strategy is. So a person may not have a skill problem. They may have a strategy problem. So I said, okay, the first thing I need is a strategy. So I'm thinking through, if you don't have a product, what's your strategy to make it? Then I said, okay, products become valuable if there's a demand. The demand is based on a problem. What is a big problem that people have that I could solve? So never look at your problems as if it's something that is coming to destroy you. It's there to prosper you. So then I said, okay, let me just decide, okay, this is what I'm going to do. 8 weeks, I took an idea, just a thought, turned it into a product through execution. See, a lot of people have great ideas and dreams and visions, but they never execute. What one thing can you do that can change everything? So I did that every day, 8 weeks. And at the end of 8 weeks, guess how much I made? Exactly.
Oh my God.
Listen, exactly $1 million. Exactly. Not 1,000,001, not 1,000,002. Exactly. What if I had challenged myself at 10,000? Now, that's money. Let's park it aside. What if I had challenged myself physically or emotionally? What if I challenged myself in my relationships? I challenged myself in marriage. What if I can actually control the outcome. And this is what people say, I manifested that. You did. How did you do it? Thought, emotions, feelings, actions. You executed. So people go by feelings and they make a decision. But what if there's a life hack? Let's bring it all the way up to thought. And then your feelings are going to follow. So will your habits. So will your actions. Thinking does not require a degree. You don't have to go to school. You don't need a PhD. It's a gift. You do it naturally. Yeah. But what if you can harness the incredible power of thought? What if you could do that? As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. If you want to know what you've been thinking about your life, look at what's manifesting. Do not curse or resent or reject what has already manifested. Go back up and say, this is what I want. This is the image that I see. How do you see your life unfolding? Because how you see it unfolding will unfold. And what's not there for you will never be here for you. Your feet will never take you where your mind has never been. So the hardest work in life is not changing anything out here, is to change your mind. And any time you decide that you're going to change your mind is when you'll change your life. This is whether it's in an abusive relationship. This is whether it's an addiction. This is whether it's poverty. Don't try to do things out here. It will always evade you. People will always change. People will always do this. You know, the economy will always do this. Government will always do that. All of that is out of your control because you'll still be playing supporting actress. But when you decide, I'm going to be the lead actress in the unfolding of my life, it starts right here, the thoughts. And that's the hardest thing to change. But the moment you do, everything about your life will line up.
Oh, that literally, I didn't know if I should just stay silent or cheer. Your feet will never go where your mind doesn't. Holy smokes. That really hit me. That really hit me. People need to write that quote and put it on their mirror, on a Post-it, and just read it every day because that is so freaking powerful. The analogy as well, just so beautiful. If you don't mind taking me through, so once you met your husband and you had this discussion, I love that. Talk to me about how you started to set boundaries and how each of you started to set boundaries, especially as I think of, I'm just going to project myself. So I'm 44. And so when I think about myself when I was in my 20s, I was much more malleable. I didn't really have boundaries. I was like, yeah, sure. And as I get older, I get more, I don't want to say dogmatic. I like to think of myself as like being very open, but I do get a certain, like, I like it this way and I have certain behaviors and this is what I want. And so I feel myself getting less flexible as I get older, setting more boundaries as I get older. And I think that that has really served me. It's made me stop people pleasing. It's allowed me to really be myself instead of being dictated by other people's expectations. But where's that fine line between being open to impact each other or making sure that you stand firm in your boundaries?
So having a keen understanding of where you end and where you begin, I think you grow into it. And you started early. Most women don't discover that until they're 50 and 60 and they're ready for retirement and then they're putting their feet down. And then you don't have enough energy, to enforce this is what I want, this is what I need, because you're already exhausted living life. But you started young, and everyone can start now, I think, by deciding what you need from another person that you cannot give yourself. So you can give yourself happiness and you can give yourself joy, but you can't give yourself a sense of belonging to an individual or a community. You can't give that unless you're with others. And I think the whole idea of having personal boundaries and exercising that in a relationship or in marriage, I think that's very important for women because everyone has expectations of a woman. And I'll give you an example. I was on a board. This is another board. I was on a board and it was all men. I was the only female. So when they came in, we were taking a break and they looked directly at me and they said, "Oh, we need coffee." And I looked them straight in the eye. I said, look, I run companies. I have assistants that get me coffee. And I'm not your assistant. Get it yourself. When the second thing they said was, all right, we need someone to take minutes. And they were looking exactly at me. I looked at them. I said, it's up for grabs. I'm not one of them. That is a boundary. I'm a very kind person. I naturally give. If you came to my house, I'm naturally going to serve you. You came the first time, fine. The second time, fine. Third time, people expect that from you. And I have to insist now, listen, this is not something that you're going to expect. And this is not the role I choose to play in your life. I'm not going to play this role. So in my marriage, when we got married and we were living together now, this was the official thing. My husband asked me, what's for dinner? And we had to have a come to Jesus. I naturally do this, but you cannot expect this all the time. Now, I'm going to treat you like a guest always. You're my house guest. But a house guest cleans up after themselves. A house guest takes care of themselves. And that's not something I'm going to do. Now, when you found me, I had a housekeeper. And I had a housekeeper for a reason. So here's our boundaries. This is what's going to happen here. And he said, thank you very much. I'm glad you told me. Now I know. That was a boundary. You have to set financial boundaries. If you have a family, say for instance, if I'm financially successful, I may have more than my family. I am not obligated to lend anybody any money. So here is my boundary. I never lend money to anybody under any circumstance. If I can't give it, I'm not going to lend it to anybody. That spouse, siblings, friends, you cannot ask me to borrow money from me. Why? Because I'm not a bank. Thirdly, helping people, you have to make sure that you don't extrapolate from them their dignity. So I had to learn the first time they're happy, the second time they're grateful, the third time they expect it, the fourth time they'll resent you if you don't do it. So you have to put boundaries into what you call help. Are you enabling them? Are you helping them? So help means, yes, you're going through a hard time. I'm going to help you. But here is some information that you need. Here is an organization that can help you. But what I'm not going to do is play the role of your rescuer, because we all have to live our lives ourselves. Boundaries are psychological boundaries. We grew up with 8 people in the house, abject poverty. My mother taught me boundaries. This is your sister's drawer. Everybody had one drawer. One. No 2, no 3, one drawer. This is your sister's drawer. You never go in your sister's drawer without permission. Boundaries. So you have psychological boundaries. How far are you going to let people penetrate your psyche? Number 1. Number 2, you have physical boundaries. How far are you going to allow someone to touch you or invade your physical space? Number 3, you have relationship boundaries. If you have 10 friends and I'm the 11th, how are you going to say this is a two-way? It's not all of us. This is between us. And how do you treat people to respect the relationship that you have with other people without feeling as if they have access to that too? So you have those kinds of boundaries, financial boundaries. It's not just boundaries. It's boundaries of your mind, boundaries of your emotions, where you tell people that does not make me feel good. Back up. Never say that to me ever again. Never. I'm never going to allow you to talk to me that way again. You got to do that the first time. You have professional boundaries. And this is where women make a mistake.
What up, homie? I got something free and new to share with you right now. How often are you visited by that negative voice in your head telling you that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, experienced enough, not fill in the blank? One of the most powerful things you can learn to do in life is to turn that negative voice into your bestie. And I want to teach you how to do that and so much more in my 4 Steps to Becoming Confident workshop. And guys, the most amazing thing is you can actually register for completely free for this workshop. So click the link on your screen and I'll see you on the inside.
Because when we are in the workplace, you're not there to make friends. You've got to set boundaries. You're not my friend, you're my colleague. So with a relationship, there are 12 bands of relationship. Each one of those bands is a solid line. It's not perforated. So you never make your friend your business partner. And if that friend is your business partner, the rules, roles, responsibilities change. So you got to know the rules, roles, responsibilities, expectations of every relationship. And there are 12 bands. And you have to put people in their place. So if I meet you, the first thing is, I once was a stranger. There's a band for a stranger. Then we're meeting one another. We're mere colleagues right now. I can feel like your friend, but do I have an invisible list of criteria for friends? So now you have to prove that to me, that here are the criteria, you meet the criteria. Now, my rule of thumb was never to date a colleague, no matter how attractive I was. Never date a colleague. I stuck to that. Because, yes, there are men that are attracted to you, but you're my colleague. The problem comes when I compromise that line of demarcation and turn it into a perforated line. My husband is my husband. That's a category all by itself. He's my spouse. So that line can never be perforated by the children. It can never be perforated by my extended family. My extended family is my extended family, and it has criteria for itself. So boundaries, you almost have to learn that. Here are the 12 bands of relationship. Here are the boundaries. Here's what you do with your relationship with yourself. Here are the boundaries. Then you move out, your spouse, then your children, then your extended family, then your friends, then your mentors, then your coaches. Then you move out to strangers. Can a stranger become a friend? Absolutely. But they must first be in the category of a stranger. Then do they fit the criteria? So we meet people all the time, you and I, all the time. Amazing people, beautiful people, but they're still strangers. And it's just like on social media. We talk about social media friends. That's a problem. They're social media strangers. You don't know these people. But people would say, oh, you're a friend of mine. And they really mean it. We're friends on social media. And then they get upset if you don't function under the criteria of a friend. So we have to, go back and redefine everything in this hyper-connected environment that we're living in. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that was so fascinating. I never heard of the bands, and I love the idea of the criteria, because then you would change the band. So as you were navigating these boundaries with your husband, because he had children, how did you navigate those boundaries between the two of you and his kids? Because I think that becomes, it seems like you've just done it beautifully, but it's very difficult for a lot of people when they join a family that already has kids, especially if you don't have children, there can be a lot of tension, I would say, in sometimes these families joining together.
Yeah, I have bonus children. They're adult children, which is really good. But it's very tough when you have little children and you have teenagers. Number one, there has to be the respect for the genetic relationship that either spouse, either the woman or the man has with their children. Number two, you have to manage your expectations of them, and they have to manage their expectations of you. So you do have to have that heart-to-heart conversation. Number three, you have to give the children time to get to know you and time for you to get to know them. And then you have to give them permission to not to feel that they have to call you mom. My kids call me mom.
Yeah.
Decide on, okay, what would you like to call me? How would you like this to go? If they're living in the house, they were used to a different kind of structure. If your structure is changed, they have to, you have to give them time to understand your structure and expectations. And I think this is why babies are born with no personalities. Because they have to have time to get to know you as mommy and you to get to know them as mommy. Can you imagine if your child was born a full adult with cognition, intelligence? They're like, well, who are you and why are you dressed that way? And they're talking to you like, I don't like that. I don't like your food. And I don't, you have to, they grow into you.
Yeah.
You nurture them, but they make you. So a child actually makes you into a mother. And so likewise with, learning about these human beings that were never in your life, you didn't create them, they didn't have that time where they got to know you, they were attached to you emotionally before they had cognition and all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to do the same for this new family that you're in. They have to get to know you. You have to get to know them. What happens if they don't like you? You are not playing supporting actress. I keep hammering this. You're not the supporting actress in the unfolding of anybody's life.
What would you have done if they didn't like you?
Allow them not to. It doesn't change me. I'm leading actress. I hold the script. They cannot give me a script.
But do you think it would have affected your relationship with your husband?
Yes, definitely. It'll be something that we have to work through because I couldn't tell him not to like his children that don't like me.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I've done. I keep all my relationships off limits to everybody. So my relationship with my husband is strictly between he and I. We don't talk about what he feels about my family. He could feel any way he wants. I know where I end and I begin. My relationship is not with you, your family, your cousins, your uncle. My relationship with you. Does this work? And if it works, I'm not going to allow someone to contaminate what is pure with us.
How do you prevent that?
You have an adult conversation. Going back, this is what I need from you. This is what I want from you. What is us? How do we define us? And that's important. What if my husband allowed someone to interfere in our relationship? I still know where I end and he begins. This is his narrative. This is not my narrative. My narrative is here. So what if your staff and everybody doesn't like me? What if my staff and everybody doesn't like you? There's a solid boundary there. This is all I'm interested in. When I walk away, I know where I end and they begin. I can't stop your feelings. I'm not going to go back into your feelings. I can't control that. I can control mine. This is what I'm controlling right here. This is where boundaries in relationships are important. So what if my family didn't like him? This is what I control.
So did you do that with him and then separately with his children?
I got to know them separately. I called them, each one of them, find out who they are, you know, test them, told them who I am. What I don't have is a lot of time. So I said to them, look, if you ever need me, call me anytime you want. I may not always be able to answer the phone. I could be on an airplane. So make sure you get other people that you can rely on. I cannot be the sole go-to person. I had that conversation. And the same thing with my husband when we were dating. He said, all I hear is zippers and you're always on an airplane and you're always here. This is the woman that you're going to marry. I'm not the traditional woman. This is my calling. This is my life, you know, and there are some nights I go to bed after him. And he's such a gentleman. He would sit up, you know, and wait for me until he figured out, I can't keep up with you. I'm a night person. He's a morning person. Difference. So don't try to make me a morning person. I'm not going to try to make you a night person. We'll meet somewhere in the middle. But it was learning how to navigate the terrain of his psychology and him navigating mine. This is why I do this. When I say this, this is what I mean. One of the things that frustrated him, we have never argued one day in our lives.
Oh, wow.
Never. But we did have a moment of frustration when we were talking and I asked him, what do you mean when you say that? What's your context? He said, it's just a simple word. You're very intelligent. You should know what it means. And I had to say to him, every word has a context. And I have not been privileged to live with you for 60 years. That's a whole lot of context. Before I make a conclusion with what you're saying to me, it's best that you give me a context and help me to learn. So what I did when we were dating, I gave context for everything. Long story. I said to him, I'm not going to trust you automatically. You can't tell me anything that I'm going to trust that you're going to do it. You have to prove it. And here is why. So I gave him examples. I've been taking care of myself since I was 8 years old. Since I was 12 years old, I've been financially responsible for myself. I'm not afraid of anyone. I'm not going to be afraid of you. Here's your context. So now when I say X, Y, and Z, I don't trust you until you prove it. Now you understand what I'm saying. It's not you that I'm talking about. Here's my context. Now it's easy. It was easy. Oh, I get it.
That's so powerful. Me and my husband still do that. So I was, brought up in a very traditional Greek Orthodox family and, in London, and he was born in Tacoma, Washington. So it's like you couldn't get more different upbringings. And that was one thing that we would argue about. We would argue. But we call it frame of reference. So when you say this, your frame of reference is X, Y, and Z, but my frame of reference is actually over here.
Yes.
And so now we think we're saying the same thing, but we're actually talking past each other because we're using the same words, but they mean very different things to us.
Very different. Culture.
Yeah.
It's culture. It's all culture, and I understand that. For instance, I'm British American, you're British American. So we got this British thing going on. And, the Brits are more formal than American. You don't invade a person's space or you don't ask personal information because we don't have that relationship. So I had to adjust to that because initially it looked like I was conservative, reserved, and a bit standoffish. when in fact I'm the most friendliest person. But it was culture. It was the culture. And culture is important. And I think one of my strategies is to seek to understand before demanding that I be understood. And that has helped a lot. I want to understand why you say, and I think assuming that a person understands what you're saying leads to the worst kinds of relationships. I was talking to my makeup artist, right? And I asked one question and she gave the answer based on what she thought I was asking, but I had to reframe it to get the right answer. And sometimes we have to reframe our lives that way so that people get us. We can't assume that anyone understands. It's like telling a story and telling someone, oh, I want you to draw a round circle. Then I want you to put 2 antennas on the circle. Then I want you to put 5 sticks on the circle. And then I want you to put some spots on the circle. And if you had 5 people, it'll be 5 different pictures. Because I was describing a ladybug.
That was not what I was picturing in my head.
What were you picturing?
I was like, is that like a stick figure pig or something? I was like, and then you said antennas. I was like, okay, she's not going for a pig. Maybe it's a reindeer.
So you see,
yeah.
And if this is communication here, can you imagine how difficult it is for a person to show up in their lives amongst other people and then help people to figure out who they are and how they should be taught?
And now thinking about the difference with cultures and then just even in generations as well. There's just certain things where I'll say something and then the younger generation perceives it as very different. I was like, what did you think I said? And so that's what me and my husband talk about, is defining words. And so we have our own little like mini dictionary, if you will, of when I say this, this is what I mean. Okay, do we agree on the meaning of this word?
Yes. And it means that you have to put more effort. You have to put more effort into your life, into your relationships. You have to exercise all those things 24/7, all the time.
And the reason why I think that this is so important with everything we're talking about is because there are so many moments that I'm sure you and your husband are like, oh, we don't see eye to eye. Oh, well, it's not going to work. Or, oh, well, you think I should stay at home and cook, but there's no way, I'm a businesswoman and I command boardrooms. Oh, well, I guess it's not going to work. Like there's all the opportunities, if you will, to turn someone away. And so understanding and loving hearing the way that you process things, of how you've been able to be so damn freaking successful, independent, badass, and then be able to also be a beautiful wife and meet someone, later on in life and still having the right mindset, not giving up on compromising who you are, not diminishing yourself or your light, which I think a lot of us do end up doing. And so the one thing I want to ask you is, you exude confidence, exude it. And so many people want what you have. Like they want that, like to be bold, to be able to say the things that they mean. What do you think are the key things that have allowed you to be as confident as you are, if someone's listening right now and really desperately wants that confidence?
One of the things I do with my clients, I give them a DISC test. It's a personality test, but it's contextual. So the context of the DISC is not just showing you your strengths and your limitations, but showing you how you naturally own a room, command attention. How do you do that naturally? And this is what I want you to do. Do more of this. And if this part of the limitation is hurting you, here are some strategies to compensate for that. Where's your energy naturally? So exuding confidence simply means that you accept yourself as you are, your temperament, your personality. Nothing wrong with you. There are some habits that you might have picked up along the way and some life strategies that may have worked back then when you were 18 and 19 and 21 and 30. but they may not work with this new version of yourself. Don't be afraid to peel that away. Two things cannot exist in the same spot. So if you get rid of this ineffective habit, an effective habit can replace that. That's the second thing. You can only be yourself. So if your refrigerator, stop trying to be a microwave. And if you're a microwave, stop trying to be the kitchen table. Show up as you are and own your space. The space is you. Give what you can to the world, but first give to yourself. Fill your own cup up, and then let everyone benefit from the overflow. And thirdly, stop trying to be like something that you're not. Too much energy. When you go, if you went to a psychotherapist, you don't want a talkative psychotherapist. You want someone that listens. So even if you're quiet, we need you. People pay $175 an hour for you to go, And how did that make you feel? So if you only say 10 words, choose a profession that requires that. You could think of scientist. Can you imagine being in a laboratory with acid and all over, and you have someone that's dancing around and kicking things over? Too much energy. You need that phlegmatic personality. You need that quiet personality. But then if you have a performing artist, you don't need phlegmatic. You need someone that is loud, that owns the room, that gives the energy. You want that. So you can find something suited for your personality without feeling that there is something inherently wrong with you. Nothing's wrong with you. You just need to find the platform. And then number two, just own you and stop trying to be someone else. Everybody else is taken. So you might as well be yourself, because that's the ultimate gift that you can give. You give it to yourself and you give it to the other. And therein lies the secret to confidence.
I love that. Can I ask you something about your number two there, where you said about showing up, just show up as who you are. What if who you are is very insecure?
That's a limitation, isn't it? So it's not your strength.
I see.
So that's a limitation. And if you have insecurities, you might need help. And that's where maybe a coach will come in, maybe a psychotherapist will come in. You can ask for help. I'm task-oriented, so I'm a task-oriented person. I had to learn how to be more people-oriented, to sincerely care. How are you doing? How's your day? Is everything going all right? Because for me, it's like, go, 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 go. What are you crying for? Go, 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 go. What happened? Go, 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 go. And to really stop and say to a person, I see you. I'm concerned about you. And maybe we could fix this. Let me offer this as a suggestion. Then go, 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 go. So putting people first, and then production and performance second, as opposed to the performance. I had to learn that because I'm type A, but not everyone's type A. On the disc, I'm a D, I'm a dominance, but I've learned how to build teams. Everyone's important. The I's, the influencers, and the C's, the conscientious, and the S's, the steady, were all needed. So everything is learned, and you learn as you go. And I think that's the secret of success, right? You're never truly ready. A lot of people say, when I get ready, when I get this. No, as you go, you'll gain the skill. As you do, you'll gain the skill. I don't know how to do this. As you go, you'll do it. And some skills take longer than the others. And I was just telling my team just a couple of minutes ago, did you know that you have over 600 abilities? 600, that's a lot.
600.
600. That's how awesome you are. That's how bad you are. Why don't we succeed at all? Because some things we're not interested in. Some things other people could do for you. You don't have to do it all. But 600 abilities. And each one of us have an ability to change how we do life if we connect with ourselves. And for my mother, you would never know her name unless I said it. No one would ever write a history book about her. But her one thing that she gave to this world was to raise 7 children in the midst of abject poverty and to model for us what it means to be a healthy, contributing member of society. And I became an entrepreneur because my mother was a serial entrepreneur. And she never begged. She never expected anyone to do it. But what she gave to this world was me. And so women, a lot of times we think that it has to be something big. You have to have a book. You have to have a business. That's not it. You play on the one string that you have, and that is purpose. Play on that one string. And my mother's purpose was not just to raise 7 kids, but to raise Cindy, so that she was not insecure, so that she had confidence, so that she didn't believe that she had to marry and a man had to take care of herself. To raise her to know you have to give back to society. And that's what she insisted. You are going to give back to society. So at 8, I had to volunteer. And each woman, anyone that's listening now, don't compare yourself with someone else. You might be a cashier. You might be a bus driver. It might be that one child on that bus route that becomes the next president of the United States of America. Anne Sullivan, the one thing that she was called to do is to teach one little girl who was deaf and dumb, to teach her how to communicate. And that was Helen Keller. So we read about Helen Keller. But what about Anne Sullivan? We read about Albert Einstein, who was diagnosed as being educable. They called him dumb. But he had a mother. They sent him home from the educational institution and said he will never learn. So he says to his mother, what did they say? And the mom said, oh, they said that you're bright, you're smart, and the school cannot accommodate your intelligence. So we've got to educate you home. And if it wasn't for his mother, who we don't know who she is, we would not have E equals MC squared. So be you, bring the best of what you have to the table. Don't lower your expectations or standards. Bring your own happiness to the game. Just be you. Because if you can connect with you, you'll make the world a better place.
Cindy, that was just so beautiful. Where can people find you? All the amazing things that you're doing, your books, your businesses, like just everything.
All right, all my books, Amazon.com. I'm really pushing Unstoppable. And on Cindy Trimm or Dr. Cindy Trimm. It's either Cindy Trimm or Dr. Cindy Trimm, and trimminternational.com for our mentorship and our coaching.
If you want to learn how to go from lost and broken to freaking confident and badass, then keep watching.
I had the internal dialogue like this, like, am I good enough? Am I worthy, right, to be at this table? But at the same time, I start looking at certain things. Oh, I guess I did this and that was good. And I guess I did this and that was good. And I am deserving. You know, the self-worthiness is probably one of the it's kind of like we don't pay enough attention to it, and we don't understand how damaging the low self-esteem can be. and how misleading and how, just how many, you would be stunned, how many successful people have very big issues with self-worthiness, with imposter syndrome and everything else. Like my husband and I, we train a lot of people who make 7 figures a year or more, and every single time, and nobody says like, oh, I have low self-esteem, that I have this or I have that. They always like, oh, I don't know how to do this, or I don't have enough people to talk to, or I don't know how to grow my business. Not realizing that those are just the results of the low self-esteem, because they're limiting their belief about themselves, and because of that they're either dismissing the opportunities, or they're not moving forward, or they're not becoming more successful, different things like that. So constantly reminding yourself that you're smart, you're good, you're powerful, you're strong, kind of like building that affirmational belief in you. Just like on the opposite side, the bad stuff can damage everything. Just reminding yourself that, yeah, look at what I've already accomplished. Because awareness is another big thing to recognize, like, what am I good at and what am I not good at? And surrounding yourself with people who are better at other things that are important to you. Just like my husband and I, the way we work is, he has so many amazing skills and talents, and I am not necessarily or I'm not at all frustrated or worried that I'm not as good as him in particular areas. Because he's an amazing speaker, he's an amazing trainer. I'll probably never be as good of a speaker as he is. But at the same time, I recognize that I have my own good qualities. I have my own strengths, and I have my own talents, that if we combine those two together, instead of comparing or competing, we combining those together, and now it makes something more powerful. That's why we call ourselves two-headed monster, because together we can do so many amazing things that we can do by ourselves.
That's so powerful. And the worthiness piece is exactly how I feel, girls, which is why I started this whole episode on your past relationship, right? The empire that you built, I didn't even start there, because to the point of, if you don't feel worthy, period. If you don't feel worthy, you're not getting up and going after that dream. And so how do we allow people, or give people the tactics and tips to feel worthy so they can freaking go on their dream, leave that toxic relationship, start that business, have the family they've always desired, whatever that freaking dream is? Why don't we go for it? Because I think a big part of it is we don't feel worthy to have the dream in the first place. In fact, as you were laying it out, understanding why you and Eric work so well is because you both have found your own worthiness within that relationship. And so when you find these relationships where either you're bringing the same thing to the table, or someone's dismissing what you believe is worthy, now you don't feel worthy, right? So you even said he's the two-headed monster, right? He's got his skills. He's so freaking amazing. I mean, one of the biggest, most impressive speakers in the world. And you're not competing with him.
Right.
You're complimenting him. And now you're able to feel your own worthiness even when you're with a really powerful man. And I'm actually glad that we're talking about this, because I get asked this question a lot as well. When you're married to someone who's very strong-willed, right, like my husband and your husband, and we're still strong women, how the hell do we stand our ground? And then how do we have beautiful relationships? And I think it's just that. It's finding our own worthiness, building our confidence in isolation, not with our partner, but in isolation, and then having the confidence in the relationship and finding the worthiness in the relationship so that you can both thrive.
Right. And also understanding that we are responsible for our own emotions and our experiences through life, right? Nobody can make you happy. Nobody can make me happy. So I think the biggest challenge comes in when we give away that power to somebody else to make us happy. So I remember you in your book, and we talked about it, and you told me that story as well, when you had your issues with your stomach, and you were laying on the floor, and you were trying to call Tom for him to come and rescue you, and then you realized that you don't need Tom to rescue you, you can rescue yourself, right? That is such a powerful distinction, and we often forget about it. We often give the keys to the kingdom to somebody else, keys to our happiness, keys to our success, keys to our self-worthiness, keys to our confidence to somebody else, thinking that they can make us happy, thinking that they can make us successful. Nobody can make you successful. We can give you all the books, all the scripts, all the knowledge, but I cannot drag you through the finish line. I can give you the knowledge and you can take it or not. And same thing with happiness. So same thing in marriage. And for us, I think recognizing, first of all, that I need to bring my best version to this marriage. And he needs to bring his best version to this marriage, because I cannot make him happy. I can bring joy into his life. I can bring love. But at the same time, it's also how often you see when you give people love, you give people attention, but they're not happy. They're not satisfied because your way of giving love is not necessarily their way of receiving love, right? That's why the book 5 Love Languages is so big, because people kind of speak different languages trying to explain to each other that they love each other, and they don't get it because their expectation of what love should be given in a way is different than the way they receive it. So respect is one of the big key factors in any relationship, business or personal, it doesn't matter, because if there is no respect, I think it's eventually that relationship going to cease to exist, because we all going to have differences. We are going to have different opinions. Like my husband and I could not be more polar opposite in a lot of different ways, specifically from my upbringing, right? I grew up in a communist country. He grew up in a capitalism, right? He grew up in the church family, and I grew up in a communist environment when the church was and religion was prohibited completely. You know, so now we mix together, and we kind of like, there's a lot of stuff we need to talk about, right? There is a lot of things that are not normal to me or unusual to me. Same thing for him, right? So we have to communicate that. But if we're not communicating that with the respect, then it turns into the fights, then it turns into drama, then people cannot hear each other, then people cannot get to the core of the problem. So if you cannot communicate to get to the core of what is bothering you, to get to the core and to build that relationship of trust, to that foundation of trust, that you feel okay to be vulnerable, that you feel okay to be yourself, and you feel okay to say, you know what, that bothers me, honey, that hurt my feelings. You know, you need to get to that safe place first, but you cannot get there if you're not communicating respectfully. You cannot build that trust.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, how do you build trust after you've given trust over and it has been abused and it has been used against you? And I think it really goes back to the thing that you were saying about building your own confidence within yourself, because Eric seems like he's very confident, and so in you having your own confidence, I think it's not threatening. And so again, going to how do we women build our confidence, stay confident, and find partners that can help fan it, not smother it, because I think that's the difference. Because it's already hard, right? It's already bloody hard to be confident without anyone influencing you. So now imagine the person that you're living with, the one that you love the most, is either using that fan or that fan becomes the blanket. So I've heard you, like, you take so much freaking ownership. I've heard you say, if I want a freaking castle and I want a king, I have to be worthy of being a queen.
Yep.
I'm like, fuck yeah, girl. So how did you become a queen? Tell me a couple of the steps.
Well, first of all, is to remember when, I don't know about you, but when I was a little girl, and I feel like a lot of little girls, we think it's like, oh, I want a prince on a white horse, blue eyes, white hair, whatever, right? I want him strong, I want him powerful. But I feel like, maybe because we do not know better at that time, we're chasing wrong qualities in our man. And that's probably what I was chasing in my previous marriage, in my previous relationships. I did not realize that, you know, having confident, loving, and caring man is much more important than blue eyes and blonde hair, or the height or the weight or whatever, right? I read an article a long time ago, and it was just basically like a guy describing it like, hey, yes, I'm rich, I'm this, I'm that, whatever, and basically to women. Just explaining like, I do not need a doll. I do not need a pretty doll that I can put on the shelf in my house and I can look at it all the time, because it's going to get boring. It's going to be exciting for a minute, and then it's going to get stale and it's going to get boring. I want a woman who is smart, intelligent, loving, caring, and all these different qualities. So it dawned on me like, okay, now I know what I do not want the relationship to look like, right? That's what I learned in my previous marriage. And I knew now what I'm looking for. And I realized like, okay, I guess that man who is confident, strong, and powerful, and successful, and loving, and caring, he is looking for that same type of woman. So in order for me to find or attract that kind of man, I need to become that woman first. So it was selfish. I was selfish, rebuilding myself too. So yes, I was doing it for my kids, and yes, I was doing it because I couldn't live like this anymore. But I also was selfishly looking for that kind of a man, and I needed to become that kind of a woman first. So I had to build that confidence. I had to realize, what that relationship gonna look like. And our relationship, we started with work. It was because he had his own habits that he brought from his previous relationship. I had my own old habits or triggers, or what we call psychic damage, that we brought both from our previous relationships. And oftentimes he would close up or I would close up, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. Like, especially as women, we're like, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. Remember that crazy phrase? So guys, if a woman tells you I'm fine,
it means that she's not fine at all.
She's not fine. There is something wrong with that. So Eric was smart to kind of like push back on that and say, no, baby, I know you much more than you give me credit for. Talk to me, because this is what happens in the relationships often enough that, because we do not either want to go into the depth because we don't feel like it, or we're not in the mood, or we are worried what's going to come out of this, right? So we're not pushing our partner to open up, or we're not creating that safe space so they're comfortable to open up, right? And in this way, it's easier to close up, especially if in your previous marriage or your previous relationship, you were punished for telling the truth, or it would turn into the fight, right? It's like how often, and I think we're all guilty of that, when the fight starts about something super silly, all of a sudden, 30 minutes later, we're screaming and yelling bloody murder about something that has nothing to do with who's taking the garbage out, right? And we're already talking about the generations and money mismanagement, and somebody looked at somebody weird, all kinds of nonsense comes out. But that was just a trigger. So what happens is and Eric actually taught me that analogy, and it was so visual and so helpful for me. Imagine spouses are like two hands, right? You're one and Tom is another one, or Eric and me, one in the other hand. And when we have some misunderstanding, or we have some miscommunication, or somebody offended somebody, even unintentionally, right? There is a small layer of a duct tape that goes around our hands. And because it's one, you can still break your hands. You can still kind of move them around. But then somebody said something else, or somebody offended you, or somebody said something mean to you, or somebody threatened your feelings, or whatever it might happen. Another layer and another layer and another layer of duct tape goes around your hands, and now you cannot break them. Now you cannot see clearly. Now you cannot get to the bottom of that problem. So that's why understanding this concept, for me, him and I will always talk about this. Babe, this bothers me. Let's have a conversation right now. I know you guys have a day of the week, right? When you guys do that. I'm not that patient. I cannot wait. I'm just I have to solve this right this second, right now. And so we kind of talk about it, and we're okay, I get your point, you get my point, and sometimes there is a negotiation that happens in the process, because you might want to defend your position, but you also need to listen and understand your spouse or your partner position. And that's what happens. So we communicate with respect. And once you make it a habit, you don't have to wait for the duct tape to build up and build up and build up. Because what happens is it's just like that little snowball. You kick it from the top of the mountain. By the time it gets to the bottom, it's an avalanche. Right? That's what a lot of relationships do have. And that's why we see so many divorces, especially when kids get out of the house, they go to colleges, parents separate, because they were trying to hold this craziness together for kids, but now they have nothing to talk about it. They grew apart so much. We either grow together as a couple or we grow apart. So the moment you start feeling that you're growing apart, try to do everything in your power to bring it back together. What are our common dreams? What are our hopes? What drives us? What are passions that we have? What are habits that we want to create, or whatever it might be? So constantly keep bringing you and your spouse on the same page so you can grow together. And that's why for me that was so helpful in my conversations with Eric, recognizing that if we do not talk about this, if we do not get to the bottom, if we do not clean the foundation for our empire to be built on, then we won't be able to build that empire because it's going to collapse like a courthouse.
Oh, dude, you're talking about momentum, right? And I think that that's so damn powerful, because if you're butting heads and you don't address it, that momentum is going to continue. And then to your point of it's a snowball effect, that it just keeps going. And I've heard you talk, actually, I think it was more about business, and I use the same philosophy, but the positive versus the negative momentum, and how, depending on, it can either be good or bad. So talk to me about how you've actually used that, especially the positive momentum, because I think the negative momentum you've just very eloquently laid out. Explain to me how we can actually use the positive momentum to create like either a great relationship or something in business, something successful in business.
Once you recognize that, once you're aware that you are in a positive momentum, you just need to double down on that, right? And continue to build on and continue to build on. I'll give you, it's probably not going to be quite the answer that you're looking for, but inside of our business, we have what we call 90-day game plan. And that basically means whatever your goal is, you're trying to put massive momentum, massive activity into that short period of time. Right? If you're in a recruiting business, then you just basically, that's all you do. You're all in, you're making calls, you're making sales, you're making whatever it needs to be in your business, right? So you can build a customer base, so you can build a prospect base, whatever it is, right? And it's going to be hard, but it's going to be for a season. It's not going to be forever. This is when you build that foundation that you can later grow, right? That's when like burst of activity is something that is very similar to all the athletes, you know, like all the football players, right? They're not working 24/7 every single day of the year, but they're working their butts off in preseason to get in shape for the season. They're working their butts off during the season, and the postseason, they take a little break, they take a little time off so they can recover their bodies and start the season strong again. So it might be more than 90 days for them, but 90 days is a pretty good concept. And what is interesting, when you make a decision, the universe starts testing you. When you make a decision to change your life or to do something special or start that new project that you always dreamed of or start chasing your goals and dreams, the universe is gonna see if you're for real or if you're full of shit. And it's just gonna say like, okay, let me throw a little wrinkle in here. Let me throw a little obstacle here. Let me do a little something. And if you back off, then you pretty much lose, right? But if you are strong and confident and determined to do something special, then you keep moving through all the different challenges. You keep moving through obstacles, and you can eventually achieve those goals and dreams. But you have to withstand that wind, right? That is pushing your sail in the wrong direction because you think that you put the sail up. It's not just putting the sail up. It's about catching the wind, because if wind blows into your face, it's hard to move forward. So you need to recognize when the wind is blowing, and you need to recognize how to adjust your sail. So for me, it's recognizing that every time I start something different or I start a new project, that's going to be a test time, and it's going to be scary, and it's going to be frustrating, and it's going to be, you know, challenging at times. But remember, you mentioned something earlier, talking about people that are not achieving their dreams and not because of the self-esteem. I think it's not just self-esteem. I saw one statistic a while back, and it impacted me in such a powerful way. It says 98% of people die without fulfilling their dreams. 98% of people. And you know the reason why? because they're afraid to fail. So 98% of the population is afraid of failing, not recognizing that the failure is part of the success. And I think it's one of the challenges that we see right now a lot on social media. People are like, oh, look at my, lifestyle. Look at me, glitz and glamour. Look at my Rolls Royce. Look at my private jet. Look at this, look at that. Not necessarily saying like, this is the struggle that I had to go through to get to that Rolls Royce. These are the mistakes that I've made. This is how many times I've failed my face on the floor or on the concrete. This is how many times I had to scrape my shadow out of that road, to get to that new height, to rebuild my belief, to rebuild my confidence, and to build the life of my dreams. So we're not telling enough of these kind of stories. We're only kind of like, waving that, fuchsia flag, like, hey, this is the celebration. But how we got there, all the struggle. So at least we can understand that that's okay to fail. You only fail when you quit, when you stop trying. That's the only way when you fail. But if you keep moving forward one step at a time, if you keep pushing forward one step at a time, if you keep facing your fears one fear at a time, you will get there. You will absolutely get there. Just don't stop, because most of the times your breakthrough is right around the corner. Your something the universe gonna pull back from pushing you in a day, in a second, in a moment, in a month. But we do not feel that there is that breathing room. There is that light at the end of the tunnel. And I remember there was one period of time when I couldn't breathe because I couldn't bring my son to United States. So I moved to States, and I separated with my husband at the time. And for 3 years, I was going back and forth every 2 weeks between the United States and Ukraine. And that was the time that I couldn't afford, I was buying the cheapest airline ticket possible with so many connections that I don't even know how many. It was long journey every 2 weeks.
And you hate flying. You have a fear of flying.
And I have a fear of flying. So I had to suck it up, like always. But, that was a tough time in my life, because it was not just because it was hard on my body, right? Because it was 24-hour door-to-door journey. So I had to take 3 planes, and then I had to drive myself for 4 hours. I would leave the car at the airport. So that was not the hardest part. Not having the money to buy the tickets and trying to figure it out, it was not the hardest part either. The hardest part was me constantly missing one of my men. I was either missing my son or I was missing my husband. And recognizing that at some point I couldn't breathe. But Eric kept reminding me, he's like, babe, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Just breathe. Just take one day at a time. We're gonna find a solution. We're gonna make it happen. We're gonna solve this problem. Because to me at that time, that was a problem that I absolutely must solve. There is no scenario when this problem is not solved, period. Because I cannot live without these 2 men, and I need to bring them together. So whatever heaven and earth I need to move to bring them together, I'm gonna move. But it's tough in the process. It's even emotional for me to tell this story right now. But it was so hard to live in that moment. But for everybody who's watching, or if you're going through a tough time in your life, just know there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Just like we just finished winter and we're in the spring season, after every winter, spring is coming. Just like clock, every year. If you're questioning and wondering, spring is coming. It might be gloomy, it might be rainy, it might be snowing once in a while, but spring is coming. So whatever season in your life you're going through, just know it's not going to be forever. You're eventually gonna go through it. So it's important for us to recognize that and toughen it up, get a little patience, and recognize that we can find that final destination. We can get there as long as your reasons are strong enough.
Oh yeah, your why, 100%. And I didn't want to interrupt you, but dude, you know how powerful it was to watch you go, yeah, just had to suck it up, as always. Like, that's the mentality that I'm trying to adopt, trying to help share, because it's not that you don't feel, right? It's not, you have one of the biggest hearts I've ever seen. Like we've obviously had a lot of private conversations, and you have a massive heart. So it doesn't mean that you don't feel, it doesn't mean that you don't have these emotions, it doesn't mean that you are abnormal, right? In fact, you're absolutely normal, just like all the other women.
Yep.
And yet you can sit here and emotionally soothe and then say, I gotta suck it up. And this is the point. Like, I never want to trigger people. I'm never trying to dismiss people's experiences. But anytime I think about why we women don't live the life we want, and it's because we get trapped, we get tripped up, and then how do we handle it? And I think staying on the floor is not the fucking answer. Getting back up is. Now, I say that with so much compassion and so much fucking love and heart to anyone that's listening. But at some point, I do just say to myself, Lisa, you just have to fucking suck it up.
Yep.
And then also, the things that you do behind the scenes, I've heard you really talk about this. So everything that we've spoken about is how do you show up? How do you present yourself? How do you think? But I've heard you say the thing that really does separate, you said in it was more about business, but I think of it as life, right? The leaders and the amateurs is what you do when you're by yourself.
Yep.
Your habits. So talk to me about what habits you've adopted that have enabled you to go from insecure, really feeling badly about yourself, to a fucking badass.
I'm determined to do something different. I'm determined to show my kids what's possible. I'm determined to show my community of women what's possible. I'm determined to, instill that passion into another woman or another man and the belief in themselves. I think that you ask like why as women we're not chasing our dreams, because the biggest, at least the answer that I found for myself is like we don't believe that we're capable. We don't think we're worthy. Right? So once we get to that higher level, we start sabotaging our own success. So for me, the different habits that I have that help me is the most important part. I think that I'm an inner-driven person. And let me explain what that means. It's what do you do when nobody's watching, right? When I have beautiful home, I have my gym in the house, and I have trainers coming every day at 9 a.m. And sometimes they travel, sometimes I travel, and they're not there. And I'm not always there in the gym. If they're not there, don't get me wrong. I'm just like, maybe I'm just gonna take another nap and I'm sleep a little longer. But most of the times I was like, you know what? I know you're not feeling it, but it's good for you. Go get your ass in the gym, go jump on that bike, or go push some weights and go get it done. So I can. Sometimes we often say, it's like, oh, we're so bad at selling. We're bad salespeople. I think if we ask right now, everybody in the audience, the hands would go up. It's like, I'm a bad salesperson. And I want to challenge that because we're so good. We can sell ourselves anything we want to sell. I can sell to myself that I need to lay in bed a little longer. I can sell to myself that I need to eat a little that extra fat steak because it's so juicy and it's so good. I can sell to myself everything I want to sell to myself. But I also need to recognize like, okay, there is another side of me, salesperson, who needs to push back because in every conversation, somebody's selling, somebody's buying. Just like we're selling to our kids, eat your vegetables, do your homework. And they're selling back to us why they shouldn't, right? And why it's not important, and why they don't want to brush their teeth because that's fine, right? So somebody's constantly selling and somebody's buying. So that conversation inside of our heads, that seller-buyer conversation, it just whoever wins that day. One day's, yay, Marina, powerful wins, and sometimes the lazy-ass Marina wins. So there are different days. But I think that for me, what helps me tremendously, because I'm inner driven, because I have big goals, because I have big dreams, I push through the inconvenience. I push through me not feeling it, doing it. I push through the fear. I push through those things because that cherry at the end is more important to me. That goal at the end is more important to me. So that's what drives me. Most of the times when we are outer-driven people, we need that stick. We are driven either by carrot or by stick. You either need somebody to tell you, hey, you're going to get fired. If you don't show up at work, if you don't perform, you're going to get fired. Or it's like, hey, there is a promotion, there is a little extra money coming in on the table. So we are conditioned since we were little kids to be outer-driven people. We condition to be told what to do. We condition since a young age, since kindergarten, do this, don't do that. Even we as parents, that's what we do. Don't touch this, don't do this, don't go there, be careful. I'm guilty of that too. I do that to my kids as well. I'm trying to recognize that sometimes that's not healthy. I understand worrying about my kids and, making sure they're safe is, yes, that's good and it's necessary. But at the same time, they need to learn on their own. How many times as a kid you were told, don't touch that candle, you're going to burn your hand?
Yeah.
And you still did touch it, right?
Until it hurt, yeah.
Did it hurt? Yes, it did hurt. But you had to learn it for yourself. Because here's the truth. I cannot teach you how not to make mistakes. We all need to make our own mistakes. I can potentially, and as a parent, I think our biggest responsibility is to allow our kids to do small mistakes so they can learn for themselves, that hopefully will prevent them from making big mistakes. But they have to learn through experiences. You can read every book on success, you can go through every course or every seminar. It's not going to make you successful, because you need to try through the trial and error and success and mistakes and failures and victories. You have to be in the mix and try and see what works, what doesn't work in business, in relationship, in parenting, in health, in everything. Trial and error, that's what works. So for me, I find things that work for me. I recognize that I do not want to be outer-driven person. I do not want to be told what to do. I'm really bad at abiding rules. If they're not my rules, sorry, that's not going to work. But understanding that sooner we become inner-driven, better it's going to be for our future, because we're going to be able to push ourselves or sell ourselves the vision or the hope or the belief or the courage necessary to get to our final destination.
Dude, I'm obsessed with this whole salesperson thing. It's so genius. And I'm always trying to think about how could I actually do that on a day-to-day. I think I would sit there and go, what do I actually sell myself on? Because to your point, I think you said it earlier, we're not actually sometimes aware that we're necessarily doing it, because we're almost convincing ourselves why we're doing it. So what are we selling? Okay, I'm selling myself that I'm not good at this, that I should do this, that I shouldn't do that. I think it's so genius. And then go, well, what would the opposite salesman do? How would I almost reverse my pitch, right? Because the salesman has a pitch. So the pitch is, you're going to feel so good if you just snooze that alarm. Think about how cozy this bed is, right? That's the salesperson trying to keep you in bed. And then the other, I would then counteract and go, okay, to get me out of bed, I'd be like, just think about those arms, Lisa, your muscly defined arms, how sexy they're going to be, right? And so I'm in real time, actually, becoming my own salesperson. But it's so powerful. I love it.
But I mean, to me, I love awareness. Awareness is probably my most favorite word recently, because once you're aware of the situation, of the weakness, of the challenge, of the problem, that's when you can solve it, because you cannot solve the problem you don't know you haven't. So for me, recognizing oh, these are my weaknesses. Oh, great. Thank you for pointing it out, because now I can work and I can fix them. And, oh, this is the problem. Oh, thank you for letting me know, because I did not know exists. Now I can go and solve that problem. So recognizing that, having, first of all, awareness of who we are, what do we do, what's happening in our life, what's good, what's bad, what we can control, let go of what we can't control, and improve the things that we want to improve, and hire help where we need help and we do not want to necessarily do those tasks. So for me, more I'm becoming aware of where I am and what's happening and how I can improve. It just helps me to grow faster.
How, though, as a control freak, do you let go of control?
That's the toughest one.
I know. That's why I asked you, homie.
That's the toughest one. And that's actually, I think that's the reason why I'm afraid of flying. Not by any means that I'm pilot or I know how to fly the airplane. Oh, God, no. But I just, I don't know. I think it's that whatever crazy thought that I can probably do it better,
Okay, but actually take me through this, because I'm laughing, but there's real trauma around flying. I don't want to dismiss that, and there is real fear. So how do you, and actually take me through real time, how you, whether it's flying or anything else, how do you
work through that control element? Like, what do you tell yourself to let go as you're like white knuckling it on the plane, right? Like, and again, just whether it's fear in general or specifically the plane, what is that sequence of events that happens in your brain that allows a control freak to let go of control?
Well, that's interesting, because it's not necessarily letting go of control. It's a little bit like surrendering, you know, because I recognize that pilots are trained specifically to do this job, and they're way better than I am because I have no freaking clue how to fly an airplane. So they're going to do a way better job than I ever could. Right? So that's the first thought.
Like logistics, like
just
actually
logistic.
go down to the
I'm
ground
very logical,
facts.
yeah. So I'm kind of like explaining to myself,
Love
I'm
that.
negotiating with myself.
Okay.
See, I'm selling to myself the story that they're better pilots, right?
Perfect, okay.
And that's what helps me through a lot of my fears, is to understand that the why, the mission behind it, the vision behind it is much more important than my fear. So for me, flying would stand in my way to either see my kids or to travel the world, because one of my definition of happiness is to see the beauty of this world with my own eyes and share it with people I do love and care about, and doing it in style. So traveling and flying would get me to those places faster. But even more importantly, I want to contribute to as many women as I possibly can. I want to build that confidence. I want to build that belief in them. And oftentimes it takes me to be in their space. It takes me to be at the event, to be at that venue, so I can present, or I can talk, or I can be in that mastermind in small group, whatever it is, right? So my mission is bigger than my fear. And every time I'm thinking, like, will I allow my fear to win because I'm a sucky loser? I do not want to lose even to myself. So I'll push myself, because I will not allow that fear to control me. So
it's actually a way of controlling it.
Yeah, so it is actually a way of controlling it. So I'm not really letting go of the control. I am actually taking charge, and I'm taking control, controlling the fear.
That's amazing. But here's the funny thing. I think you're absolutely spot on. It's like, because when I asked the question, I actually meant it, because I'm a bit of a control freak as well. And a lot of us, you know, joke about it. But as it can really become detrimental to our dreams. And that's why it was like, how do you process it? And even if it's, you just have to control the fear, and if that means you have to logically walk your way through it and come up with the conclusion that, yeah, you can't actually fly a plane better than a pilot.
Right.
It allows you to then really take that step forward, because again, that's just what I'm trying to think about. What holds us back from taking that freaking step forward, leap forward? And it's the big thing about fear. And I actually heard you say, which is so genius, it's like, it's not really like the fear of getting on stage, right? It's not necessarily getting on stage and being in front of the people. It's the unknown.
Yes, the fear unknown is, in my opinion, is the biggest fear by far in the world, because right now the highest ranked fear is the fear of public speaking. 61% of the population is petrified of public speaking, me included. But I never saw anybody rank the fear of unknown. But to me, it's probably the highest fear out there, because the uncertainty, the insecurity, the unknown is the worst, right? What we've seen through all the challenging times through pandemic, we did not know what's going to happen tomorrow. We did not know what's going to happen with our health. We did not know what's going to happen with our jobs. We did not know what's going to happen with our securities, how we're going to pay our bills, how we're going to interact with people, how we're going to get together. None of those things. So a lot of those things were taken outside of our control. We were put into very unknown, insecure, uncomfortable situation, and we all had to cope with this. And that's why as soon as pandemic started, I started immediately recognizing that, you know, yes, there's going to be a lot of lives lost because of the health challenges, and yes, there's going to be a lot of financial distress. But more than anything, I'm really worried about the mental instability for a lot of people, because you can only take so much stress as a human being. Eventually you're going to break. So that's why even seeing the news and them constantly telling how many people would die that particular day, even kind of like not even having on the volume, just having the TV screen behind me, kind of like pushing into my subconscious brain, by noon, I would feel like such a big weight in my like in my chest, and I was like, I can't breathe. And I felt all that negative information pushing me. So I recognized, first of all, I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear about it. I need to protect my mind from negative. I need to feed my mind with positive. I need to let go of things that I cannot control. I'm not a doctor. I'm sure all the smart doctors will figure it out. We have a lot of beautiful, amazing, talented people in this world. They'll come together. They will fix it. So letting go of control in a lot of ways is something that I had to learn, and recognizing that focus on what you can control and let go of the rest. This is probably the hardest thing for me to learn and to do in my work, in my relationships, in everything, because I want to control everything. But then I recognize I'm just one woman. I cannot do everything, right? I need to trust my team that they're going to do a good job, right? That's what they hired to do. That's where they bring those professional skill sets that I may not necessarily possess. So shame on me being so stupid and ego-driven, thinking that I can do better than them. So, okay, let them do their job. And at the same time, also recognizing I need to spend my time what I can do best, instead of just trying to do, folding the laundry and, running and filling the gas in my cars and doing all kinds of stuff that it's necessary, but somebody else can help me do that, while I can do only things that I can do, the talents and skills that I possess that somebody else doesn't. So I can be more productive with my time, so I can be more fulfilled, so I can actually move in direction of my passion and my mission, instead of being lost and by trying to freak out about everything that is happening in the world that I absolutely have zero control over.
God, do you think that came from your childhood growing up in a communist country?
The controlness?
Yeah.
Possible. It can be, because we were like so controlled. It's just fascinating. But I do believe a lot of things come because the skill sets that I have and some of my strengths that I have, as a thanks to the circumstances that I was raised in. Like, for example, problem solving. I think it's probably one of my highest skill set is to solve problems, right? And finding the solutions and being resourceful, because the way I was brought up and raised, I did not have a lot of resources. We would have, and that takes me way back in my childhood, it was like we would have huge empty shelves in the mall, and there would be one doll for all the girls with a couple different colors dresses, and there would be one truck for the boys, same truck. So at the birthday party, you would get 3, 5 dolls, however many kids you invited, and the same doll, or 5 trucks or whatever, exactly the same toy. But I would draw my own little games, like take a coin and write around the coin, and with a little cube, create my own little board game, right? Or I would cut out the doll out of the cardboard, and I would just draw little dresses and put some dresses on her. So I had to do something different, right? I had to be creative. I had to be resourceful. Even though I'm horrible at drawing, even though I'm horrible at those things, I did not use it as an excuse. I was like, oh, look at this. Nobody has this beautiful doll, just me, right? So finding ways to solve different circumstances, solve different problems, like our good friend Marie Forleo says, everything is figure-outable, right? Everything is figure-outable if you put your mind to it. So I'm absolutely grateful to all my life experiences, because they made me who I am today. I would not change absolutely anything. Even my relationship, my abusive relationship, I would not change a single bit, because now I know what relationship should not look like. And because of that, I was able to find a man of my life, my life and love of my life, right? So all those experiences, regardless of how hard they might be, and especially if you, in the moment, you think like, why this is happening to me? Why me? God, why me? And in most cases, when you look back in time, 5 years later, 10 years later, that was the best thing that happened to you. That divorce, the best thing that happened to you. You lost that job, the best thing that happened to you. Because later you said, you know what, enough is enough. I'm worthy, I'm capable, I can achieve way more than I was giving myself credit for. Let's go chase that dream. Let's go chase that relationship. Let's go chase that opportunity. But at some point, you need to get into the circumstance where your way is only forward and your back is against the wall. And sometimes somebody or something has to put us with our back towards the wall so we can only move forward. And we don't like it because nobody wants to be put with the back in the wall. But sometimes it's necessary, but time, in most cases, is the best thing that happened to us.
If you want to know what the high price women pay to committing to the wrong man, then click here right now.
And I remember 35, people saying, girl, you better go get a man, you know you almost 40, as if almost 40 is bad. I kept asking myself, is it better to be alone? Does this feel right?